This film opens up with Constance, who is a scientist. On one occasion Constance and a man named Ezekiel were in the wild taking pictures of cobwebs for research purposes. They were searching for bugs yet couldn't find any. Ezekiel discussed its occupants, which were remembered to give individuals exceptional capacities. Steady said that the occupants were legendary bug individuals who had dark toxic substance to rebuff terrible men. While Constance was talking, she felt torment in her stomach, which she believed was from the child she was conveying. In the wake of conversing with Steady, Ezekiel returned to their sanctuary to search for more data, when Consistent appeared with a container brimming with little bugs. Despite the fact that Constance would have rather not given Ezekiel the container with the bugs, he demanded making it. He then offered Constance and took off. However, without a moment to spare, the occupants showed up and helped Constance. They carried her to their place and had a little insect nibble her to assist her with mending. This is likewise where she brought forth her child. A man named Santiago drove the assistance for Steady in the birth. He let Constance know that she would have issues from now on. Following a couple of years, Consistent's youngster is currently a grown-up, and she is Cassandra Webb, whom we will call Madam Webb. Madam Webb turned into a paramedic, and her story started in an emergency vehicle with her accomplice and colleague Ben Parker. They were taking a lady to the medical clinic immediately for therapy. At the point when Madam Webb met Maddie Franklin abruptly sprung up before the rescue vehicle while skating to school. The specialist told Madam Webb and Ben that the patient they brought would be fine. With the specialist was the young man who is the offspring of the lady they helped. He provided them with a piece of paper as a thank you gift for aiding his mom. Madam Webb proposed that Ben take it, yet he rejected. At a similar clinic, Julia Cornwall, the step-little girl of the lady Madam Webb and Ben helped, was likewise there to keep an eye on her mom. During noon, Madam Webb was all the while pondering where to take the kid's card, since she and Ben could have done without discussing family, yet Ben said he may be contemplating beginning a family and embracing a canine. He likewise said he had met somebody, and according to Lady Webb's perspective it appeared to be significant. Madam Webb jokes youngster had given her. She put it in her bureau with recollections of her family. Madam Webb likewise contemplated opening one of her mom's diaries about bugs and perusing a greater amount of her mom's recollections. The following day they helped a man who had a mishap on the scaffold and whose vehicle was going to tumble off. Madam Webb and Ben hauled him out. However, Madam Webb stalled out inside the vehicle as it went into the water while she was submerged. Awakened, seeing networks and things that seemed to be the letter as she heard voices, and out of nowhere awakened, as Ben saved her and resurrected her. As Ben checked Madam Webb's signs, she had a memory and could see what he was going to say. This confounded them. Likewise, Madam Webb let him know she was fine and simply needed to return home. What he was going to say. This confounded them. Likewise, Madam Webb let him know she was fine and simply needed to return home. Then again, Ezekiel went to a major castle with symphonies playing and gave a lady a magazine. He then, at that point, took her to a confidential room where they connected. Later he had a fantasy where 3 ladies with bug-like faces showed up, and one of them removed him from a window, killing him. He plunked down in shock, and the lady close to him inquired as to whether he was having a bad dream. Ezekiel told her that he sees this vision all the time. He likewise said that the Public Organization of Safety had been searching for him for quite a while. The one who was searching for him didn't realize that Ezekiel was one individual they were searching for. The lady attempted to capture him, however he prevented her from taking out a weapon, got data from her, killed her, and afterward took her ID. Name of the child. Again she proclaimed that they had proactively done this, which befuddled everybody. At the point when Ben called Madam Webb to tell her there was a fire, Madam Webb let him know she was having déjà vu. Ben and Madam Webb went to the fire scene to help, and Madam Webb abruptly witnessed what might there, including what might befall her male sidekick. She let her friend know what she saw and proposed to assume control over driving, yet he denied, and it was past the point of no return since her sidekick's vehicle crashed as she had seen the vision. Other than Ezekiel talks with Maria about finding the ones who should kill him. Maria shows him pictures that could match the vision Ezekiel had. Ezekiel says that the ladies are still adolescents now, yet later on they will be grown-ups. He advises Maria to find the particular lady and commits her that she will be compensated for her endeavors. Likewise, Madame Web had her eyes checked and the outcomes were typical. She gotten some information about the dreams she was having and the specialist said that injury could be the reason. Likewise, Madame Web had her eyes checked and the outcomes were typical. She gotten some information about the dreams she was having and the specialist said that injury could be the reason. Madame Web didn't accept this since she had seen her companion bite the dust. The specialist showed Madame Web that every last bit of her experimental outcomes were ordinary and proposed that she ought to take rest and watch films following her primary care physician's guidance. Madame Web watched films at the same time. Ben actually minded her frequently and appeared to be stressed when Madame Web didn't reply. Once more anyway, Ezekiel's subordinate Maria saw Madame Web and Julia strolling alone and conversed with Ezekiel about it simultaneously. Madame Web got on the train and saw that Ezekiel would look for them again, this opportunity to hurt Anna, Julia and even Maddie, who was on similar train. Things began gradually with Anna getting on first, then Julia, lastly Maddie. Concerned, Madame Web accomplished something: let individuals know that she could see that remaining on the train would endanger them. They escaped when she broadcasted a crisis and took steps to hurt them with Ezekiel. As they got off the train, Ezekiel came to search for them. Natty lashed out at Lady Web for not giving her skateboard, but rather she advised everybody to run. Lady Web saw Ezekiel inside the train and advised them to run, however she saw police toward the path they should run. Julia then, at that point, shouted that Madame Web was attempting to capture them, and Madame Web highlighted the roof where Ezekiel was slithering towards them and let them know that Ezekiel wanted to kill them. When the lights went out on the train, Lady Web contemplated getting off. She saw Ezekiel over the train, who seemed to be a dim bug man. They out yet Madame Web was captured. Unexpectedly, Ezekiel pulled them, causing a ruckus. The police terminated at Ezekiel, however he didn't move hit and he discarded them. When Lady Web and the others got into her vehicle, they were stunned and discussing what occurred. Madame Web presented herself and requested their names. Julia said thanks to Madame Web for saving them. Additionally, Madame Web was glad to hear on the radio that somebody was being looked for creating problems at Great Focal Terminal. Anyway, it worked out that they were discussing her as the associated criminal with 3 youngsters. They understood that they were the ones in particular who saw Ezekiel jumping on the roof and pursuing them. Julia felt that everybody thought Madame Web was the hijacker since she had announced it to the police. Madame Web made sense of that it was anything but a capturing and made an arrangement on the opposite side. Ezekiel continued to search for themselves and called. Madame Web said she had never seen the man pursuing them before. Maddie asked her how she knew, and Julia acknowledged Madame Web was the paramedic who saved her and her stepmother. Additionally, Anna, who dwelled in their structure, knew who Cassie was. They looked at Maddie in disarray and Madame Web made sense of that. Maddie had switched her off. Madame Web uncovered that she could see into the future. When Julia scrutinized her actual personality, Maddie chuckled and tossed something at Madame Web to show her she was off base. Since Madame Web didn't figure Maddie would toss something at her, Julia recommended allowing Madame Web an opportunity, and Madame Web said she was unable to change what might occur, however was certain she had saved their lives. Julia asked Madame Web how her capacity functioned, and Madame Web said she had zero control over it. Maddie inquired as to whether she realized what planned to happen, despite the fact that they didn't need. Madame Web let them know she'd be back in 3 hours and to avoid anything idiotic. At the point when Madame Web returned home, she removed her tag and read her mom's diary again about the El Arañas. She figured it very well may be about a man named Met, so she attempted to adhere to the wall like the man, yet it didn't function. As she read on, she discovered that the Arañas could see the future like her. Still in the Timberland, Maddie recommended going to get food, yet Julia said they ought to wait since Madame Web told them to. Anna said they had no cash except for Maddie said she did. Anna blew up and said that on the grounds that Maddie had cash didn't mean she could do anything she desired. Julia got some information about her family and she said they lived with house cleaners when they at long last consented to go to the nearest cafe. MD saw Julia grinning at certain men behind them. Then again, Ezekiel left immediately in the wake of getting answering the call, and when Madame Web showed up to search for the three, they weren't there. Rather, she found them moving on a table with men. She attempted to stop them, however, as they left, Ezekiel got Julia and hammered her vehicle into the eatery, saving the three. Proceeding, they could load up the vehicle. Ezekiel got Cassie's leg, however, in her fury she dismissed him out and drove from. The three became quiet in shock as Julia apologized. Ezekiel then again is as yet searching for themselves and conversing with Maria. Maria let Ezekiel know that Madame Web triumphed. Ultimately, the last name Web, which he remembered they were last being pursued by Ezekiel by the eatery, so Madame Web. Ezekiel then decided to return. There she was stunned when she witnessed exactly the same things once more and heard as Ezekiel conversing with her future self. He let them know that these three young ladies would kill her and take her powers later on. He put squeeze on her to let everybody know where they were. Madame Web awakened and acknowledged it was each of the fantasy. She immediately awakened the other three young ladies. She let them know that the man's hands were loaded with harms, that were harming him. It gets more unsafe to the body as it comes into contact with it. Somebody asked Madame Web what might occur, and she said her heart would stop. After that, she showed them how to perform mouth-to-mouth. Maddie told Madame Web that she assumed she was a decent instructor, which was something she had never said before. She showed an image of her mom and Ezekiel, the person who was after them. Anna inquired as to whether her mom knew Ezekiel, and she said that she may. Maddie figured could have been all a direct result of Madame Web, yet Madame Web told her that the main thing she realized about her mom was that she got a kick out of a chance to concentrate on bugs, which was written in her scratch pad. Madame Web left since she needed to figure out what was happening. When Ben arrived, she conversed with him. However, when he asked what was happening, Madame Web recently left and let him know she would be back. Lady Web continued to peruse her mother's book as she got on the transport. When she got to the woodland where her mother used to search for bugs, Santiago showed up behind her out of the blue. Madame Web was keen on what Santiago prompted the insects being taken in Ezekiel's reveal. He took Madame Web to the spot where her mom passed on and where she was conceived. Madame Web asked her mother for what valid reason she was jeopardizing her own kid's life to arrive. Santiago said that her mom was terrified about Lady Web's future and that the danger didn't disappear when Madame Web was conceived. Santiago then told how her mom was deceived by being driven into the water suddenly. Lady Web saw her mom's previous existences under the water, including the hereditary circumstances she ought to have had, her mom's quest for bugs to recuperate her, and the last embrace that made her mom vanish. Madame Web acknowledged she had misconstrued how much her mom thought often about her, and Santiago told her that we need to adapt for our loved ones. Some of the time Madame Web was interested about how she could last embrace that made her mom vanish, could interface with her mom. Santiago told her that Madame Web had made the connection herself, focusing on that she expected to look further into herself and that her past was essential for the explanation. She was there. Madame Web said she needed to prevent Ezekiel from killing the three young ladies, and Santiago told her that once she took in her power she would have the option to be in more than one spot immediately and be the one in particular who could change the future. He likewise said that Madame Web would have a ton of force since she was capable. Ezekiel is as yet disturbed on the grounds that he can't find the young ladies and continues to come down on Maria for not able to make it happen. He lets Maria know that the young ladies will kill him and that he can likewise kill her. Then, at that point, Julia, Anna and Maddie were watching a film together and poking fun at one another when Mary strolled in and seemed as though she was in the process of giving birth. They immediately went to the clinic where Maria, fate of the quarrel that is over to occur and which Ezekiel will rapidly go after Julia. Madame Web assumed responsibility for the rescue vehicle she saw similarly as Ezekiel was coming up behind the three ladies and their companions. When Ezekiel saw the ladies, Madame Web stepped in and crashed the rescue vehicle, setting off the bomb that Ezekiel was conveying. Madame Web advised Ben to take Mary to the nearest clinic immediately and companions. When Ezekiel saw the ladies, Madame Web stepped in and crashed the rescue vehicle, setting off the bomb that Ezekiel was conveying. Madame Web advised Ben to take Mary to the nearest clinic immediately, and she and the other three ladies immediately left the scene. Anna was told by Madame Web to utilize a robotized outside defibrillator and pointed at Ezekiel's head in the emergency vehicle seat to stun him. The arrangement worked in light of the fact that Ezekiel contacted the rooftop and got stunned, which kept every other person from getting injured while the emergency vehicle was out and about. It stalled. Madame Webb realized immediately what might happen. She immediately concocted an arrangement. They took off when Madame Webb vowed to safeguard them regardless of what, as they trusted that Ezekiel will show up. They set off firecrackers out of control when Ezekiel got up to speed to them and attempted to pursue them. The flares disrupted the general flow. They ran rapidly towards an approaching helicopter, yet similarly as it went off, Lady Webb witnessed what might in a short battle before the plane